Welcome to the Excel 2016 Managing Workbooks. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone. If you have any questions, please type inside a chat or raise your hand inside the attendees box. What we're going to be covering today is pretty much everything and anything you ever want to know about managing a workbook, which would include the different views, how to select the different sheets within a workbook, how to insert and delete them, copy, rename, and move them. And remember, we're talking about worksheets right now within a workbook. We're going to take a look at some ways that you can navigate by splitting the screen or freezing the columns and the rows. And then we're going to start adding headers and footers into the individual sheet, as well as learning how to hide columns, rows, how to hide a worksheet and protect them. Then we're going to go to the print area. Maybe there's just a specific area within a big, very large worksheet that you want to print out. So we're going to take a look at printing, setting a print area, how to modify that, taking a look at adjusting margins and orientation, print titles, grid lines, headings, sizing, and scaling. All of those fall under the print setup and the print options. So those should be mandatory things that you do when you're working in Excel. Before you're all done, make sure that it looks good when you print it. Then we're going to switch over to working with multiple workbooks, how you can switch between them, how you can take a look at them, creating a template, and how to protect a workbook. So the sharing of a workbook depends upon everybody's individual applications. I'll show you the Office 365 way to share, but if you're not on the Office 365 or if you're not using a cloud-based storage, it won't be possible to share. But if we can get to that point, I'll go ahead and I'll show you how to share a worksheet so that multiple people can work in it at the same time. And if everybody here has that, I can share this worksheet with you. You can then log in. You can, click on it and see it, and it should work. Maybe we'll find out. I'll save it to OneDrive. So the first thing we want to do is just sort of take a little step back into the basics and taking a look at a little bit about the environment. And one thing about the environment, besides the, sorry about that, besides the ribbon and the columns and the rows, is some of the tabs up at the top. You can see one here is called a view. This view tab will give us workbook views. This is also all the way down in the lower right-hand corner of that taskbar. It's actually called a status bar, but it's just above your taskbar. And you can see if I point to them that says normal, and then it says page layout, and the last one will say page break preview. And they're also up here, normal, page break preview, layout, and then we have some custom views so that you can customize the view if you don't like using these specific ones. Now each view does something different, and you have to sort of go into different views in order to perform different actions. For example, if you want to put a header or a footer on a worksheet, you need to use the page layout view. If you want to quickly adjust your margins or page breaks by clicking and dragging, then you would use your page break view. If you want it to look like it currently is on my screen, this would be the normal view. So the views just aren't for aesthetics. There's actually functions that happen in each of the different views. So right now we are in normal. I'm going to go ahead and click on page break. Now just to give you a heads up, right now it's nice and clean and smooth. As soon as I hit the page break view, you're going to start seeing dotted lines. Those dotted lines are page breaks, and once they are recognized and imported, if you will, once Excel recognizes what the breaks in the pages are, it won't go away. So everyone always says, well, how can I get those dotted lines to go away? You can't. They're page breaks. So once you click on the page break view, you're going to see it change. And these are my page breaks. So this information on page 1 will be printed on a portrait page because I haven't gone through page setup. And then it's going to come down print a half a page, and then it's going to come up to the top to page 3 and then to page 4. So literally, in order to get this particular spreadsheet to look the way it does on our computer, we would take 4 sheets of paper and tape them together. May work if you have a nice big board that you can post them to, but it's not really feasible most of the time for meetings and things. So if I wanted to drag this, you can see that it's cut the page break right to where location and comments. And let's say I dragged it over to comments. It will work, but the problem is this will automatically adjust the size of the font. So it might be too tiny and you can't really read it. Okay, so by clicking and dragging on these, you can see that it turned to a solid line, and that's now a page break that the user has inserted, because you can insert page breaks and they're different. So this is how it's going to look. When I manipulate, even if it's an Excel forced page break, as soon as I manipulate it, it becomes solid. This one is an automatic page break. This is one that I've inserted. And I can't remove it. I mean, it's just not going to go anywhere. You can see when I did this, it added another page over here, an automatic page break. So we're going to learn how do we adjust these in our page setup, but it's always nice to come here and take a look at your page break view to see perhaps, well, maybe if I just brought this up, then I can make it more even, and maybe I can adjust this column. And I mean, there's things that you can do from this view, but it might not be the best when you print it. So I'm going to leave it like this, and we're going to take a look at it when we get to that print option. And you can always insert page breaks from the page layout tab. So let's go back to the normal view. Oops. Okay, we're there now, good. And then you can see that there's a breaks. And this one is the remove a page break, insert a page break, or reset them. Because we're in this current view, you're going to see a lot of the features are grayed out and disabled. So if I've completely screwed up my page breaks, I can reset them. They're all going to go to the default automatic page breaks. Now, once I get out of this view, so I can come down to the bottom to my status bar, and I can click on normal because I want to stay on this ribbon. You can see that I have those dotted lines that I was talking about. I can't remove those. Once they've been, Excel acknowledges that this is an automatic page break, that's where it goes. But I can insert a page break. I have to, let's say, come here to a specific area, and I can go into insert page break. See how they became alive? Once I put my mouse cursor or my box, my active cursor, where it would make a logical sense. It doesn't make logical sense to make this a page break. That's why it's grayed out. If I come over to the F column and I insert a page break, you can see that now there's the page break along the top because this would be considered a row. I can remove that page break, but I have to be in this active column. If I come here, remove the page break, because I'm touching that page break, it'll remove it. You can see here that that is now a solid line. And as I go across, the other automatic page breaks are still in the dots. If I wanted to perhaps make a column page break, well, I'm gonna select a row. I think this will just still insert the row page break. You can see that the lines are over here. That's solid line. If I wanted to insert a page break here, I've selected a column and I insert the page break. When I deselect, you could see that my page break is over to the left of the column C. When I insert a row page break, it's above it. I'm hoping that helps a little bit. So you sort of know which column to select and which row, but really experiment and practice will help. So the solid line is user input, the dotted lines are automatic. If I were to do a print preview right now, let's go ahead and put that on there. How many pages is it? It's 6 pages. And as I click through this, you can see because I've added all these page breaks and it's not properly set up yet, it's 6 pages. So when we get into the page break and the page layout area, we're going to be rearranging all of these page breaks. Now you can zoom in and zoom out. Again, right next to the different views here, you do have that zoom. So if it's a little hard to see, you can zoom in, and then that way you can put your cursor exactly where you need it. You can do the same thing with zooming out. Some of the other different views, let me go ahead and finish the views before we move on. We did our page break. The next one is the page layout, and we're going to come to this when we get into the header and the footer section. You can see it says add a header or add a footer down at the bottom, and each one of these are broken up into the pages where our page breaks are. So it is, let me go ahead and say, page 1. And when I click off of it, you can see that it goes to every single page. It's not like Word where you can insert sections and have different headers on different pages. That doesn't work. So we're going to take a look at that in a little bit. So we can close out of this just by changing our view. If you notice, there's no exit header and footer like there is Word. So you just go back to normal. Now you will not be able to see the header and the footers in these views. The only way that you can see header and footers is in your print preview or if you went into your page layout view. Now for custom views, you can see here that we have a view. You first have to have a view. You can add it. You can name it. You can set your print settings. You can hide specific rows or columns. So perhaps there's this very large report and you really, or worksheet, and you only work on these 5 columns, maybe in the middle of a 200 column worksheet. You could change that. First you want to name it, and then you want to hide everything and click OK. Well, you probably want to hide everything first, name it, click OK. The next time that you need to work in that area, you would just change your view. So let's take just a second to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my columns. To hide a column or a row, first you want to use the row or the column header, and then you can right click on it and it comes down to hide, and it's going to hide it. Trust me, it will hide it. I hit unhide, sorry. So the E and the F, see that? And right in between here is your F, E and G. F is hidden. Now, how do I unhide it? If you're really good with the mouse and you can point to that area, you can also re-click on that and hit unhide. But sometimes it might be multiple columns. Let's take these columns. And I'm going to right-click on the columns and I'm going to hide them. But if I don't know, or if I'm not real good with the mouse, go for the column before and after and just highlight them. Right-click and unhide, and it will unhide everything in between. That's, to me, is the easiest. So I'm going to re-hide these guys again. And so now I've hidden this, and I'm going to make a custom view. I can make a custom view by naming it, and I can do my print settings and hidden rows and filters. So we will go ahead and save that and just say missing DEF. Click OK. So this is a new feature. Go ahead and read this brand new feature. It just came on. Remember, they update at will. So these are saves my current display. That's why I had to make my changes first. And any print settings that I went through my print options as a custom view that I can quickly apply. So now that I've saved it, I'm going to go ahead and unhide. And in reality, if this works right, if I go to my custom view, select missing DFF and show it, you can see that it instantly changes it to the way that I had it. So this makes up for taking copies of particular tabs, renaming them, modifying them the way that you need them to be in order for you to be able, perhaps print it out. So that sort of helps, that keeps the workbook light because we're not duplicating data within it. We're just modifying a view. So that's a pretty cool feature. So those are your views. And I'm going to go ahead and unhide. Or if I hit normal, you can see it doesn't take me out. It just keeps me in that view. So there is another way that you can get around this. Go ahead and unhide these. Is if I'm going to be using a lot of custom views, and this is a sort of a fun trick that I learned in the Adobe, and in Excel as well with scenarios, is you want to save your scenario or your view first. So I'm going to go to the custom views and I'm going to add original. I always spell it wrong. It's going to save everything just as is. And I click OK. So then if I am in a custom view, remember, it doesn't undo it. I have to manually undo everything so that it would be much easier if I just went back to original. And then it would take me back. So I could have 5 or 6 different views and always go back to the original. So that's sort of a nice little tip. Is there any questions so far on the different views, on our insert, our hiding and showing of columns and rows? You can do the same thing with rows. Just select them, hide them. And you can see it goes from 13 to 26. I highlight them and unhide. Now, since we're in the subject of hiding things, let's take a look at hiding actual tabs. Down at the bottom, you can see I have Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Wednesday comments. Well, perhaps I want to hide that comment. To hide it, I just right-click on the tab and tell it to hide it. Now, there is no way, shape, or form anyone who just opens this document is going to know there's a hidden tab here. There's no indication that says, oh, in between Wednesday and summary, there should be a comments tab, like it does in our column or row headers. It's pretty distinctive all of a sudden if you're missing half the alphabet or half the numbers. That's something that draws your attention. There isn't anything that draws your attention to hidden tabs. The only way that you know that there are hidden tabs is if you right-click on any tab and notice it says unhide. Once I select unhide, it actually gives me a dialog box and it will list all of the tabs that are hidden. So I can have multiple tabs hidden. Let's do Thursday. And there's no way that you would know unless I clicked and went into unhide, and then it would bring up all of the different tabs. And at this point, I could say, you know, I need to work with comments. I'm going to unhide comments only. And so now comments appears. I can also select all of them and hide, which would be silly, but if there was more other ones there, you could. I'm going to ungroup my sheets and then unhide. And I'm just going to select them all. You do have to do it one at a time. So now I have only one, and it's now I have nothing. So if I were to right click on it, unhide is grayed. So that sort of rounds out the how do I hide things in Excel. And that would be the columns, the rows, and sheets. Now, selecting and switching worksheets, you can see that I've been switching through them by clicking on the tabs at the bottom. There are ways that you can select multiple, which I sort of gave a little hint in on the last one, is if I right-click and select all, notice how they turn very white. So at this point, if I wanted to manipulate perhaps the font to every single worksheet that I have, at this point, because they're all selected, it's the same thing as holding that Control or Shift key on your keyboard. At this point, I could say, you know what, I'm going to change this to Arial Black, and they all change the Arial black. Every single one of them will change. See? Now, as soon as I click, it deselects the rest of them. You can click on this and you can see that this one is Rockwell. Well, the other ones are Arial black. So if I right click and select all, I can also use this for formulas. Sometimes you need to select multiple sheets in order to create your formula. I don't normally select all of them. I'll select a few. I'm going to click to deselect anywhere, or I can just right click and ungroup my sheets. I can move them, I can copy them. We'll just do that copy right now. So we'll select them all. I'm going to make copies of these. So now that I have them all selected, I'm going to right click and I'm going to move or copy. Now this is very, very important to pay attention to. If you are going to copy, make sure you create a copy. That has to be checked. If you don't, it assumes you are moving. And look at the top here. This is the book that I currently have open. I can also use it or move it or copy to a brand new book. So I'm going to select a new book. I'm going to create copies of all of these tabs by clicking OK. It will open a brand new book. Notice it says book 1 and all of my tabs are here. So if you have, I have a spreadsheet that has over 40 tabs. I'm not going to sit and hold the control key or the shift key while I select all the tabs. I'm just going to right click and group all my tabs together. And now when I'm undone, I can ungroup them and I can independently choose which one I want. So I've now selected or created a separate book. These ones, the original booking 6.1, are still selected, so I'm going to ungroup. I can also just choose specific ones. So I can choose Thursday, hold the control key, and I can go alternating, or run one right next to another, or just the first two. If I do the shift, it will select them all. It's the same thing as grouping. I mentioned before that you need to have this in order to work with a three-dimensional formula, if you will. So perhaps on this, I'll just real quick do this one here. On Tuesday, I would like it to display, let's see which one has some information in it, because normally these are just blank for purposes. Okay, and we're going to come down here to this one, which is D61 on our Wednesday worksheet. So on Tuesday, I'm going to type Wednesday totals. I would like it to pull that information from Wednesday. And in order to do that, I need to be able to click on Wednesday's tab. So I hit that equal sign, which tells Excel I'm getting ready to do a formula. I'm going to come into Wednesday. Notice how both of them are highlighted. When you're dealing with a formula, you do not have to hit the control key or the shift key. Just click on it and then select that particular cell. Up at the top, this is your formula, equal Wednesday, and the exclamation point indicates to Excel that that is a worksheet and that the cell on this Wednesday worksheet is D61. When I hit enter, it will then display the results. That's the formula. So anytime that particular spreadsheet here is updated, let's put in 1,000 more. It goes to 98,825. If I go back to Tuesday, it's updated as well. It doesn't have to be just numbers. You can also do it for text. So for example, in the K column, I'm going to take the text or the headers from, let's do Thursday. So I'm going to click here and do an equal, click on Thursday, and this time I'm going to select a range, and I'm going to hit enter. and it gives me a value because it doesn't do ranges. Now, if I did a 4, it will give me last. I can use the little fill handle over in the bottom right-hand corner to continue dragging across until I get all of my headers that are associated to the Thursday, which commission I believe is the last one. That's why it ended with a 0. So you can use it with text as well. That way, if this was updated, and I'm going to put the % sign. When I come back, you can see that that's updated as well. So whether it be numeric, whether it would be titles, you can associate information from one worksheet to another worksheet by using the equal and then the tab and then going into a particular cell. You can do the same thing when you're adding things up. If I wanted to add the totals for Thursday, let's do Thursday, and if I spell it right, and Friday, let's see if Friday has anything. Yes. So I'm going to come here to my cell where I would like it to be, hit my equal sign, come into Thursday, come down, select. Now I'm going to be adding, so I'm going to hit the plus sign. I'm going to go to Friday, come down, click, and then I hit enter. It will then create the formula using the Thursday and the Friday sheets with both of those cells. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, and that's the reason why the Control, the Shift, selecting all, or using tabs are useful in manipulating and bringing in data from another tab to this tab. Switching between tabs. Now that's using the tabs. Now, as I continue on, let me go ahead and just copy these ones because I'm going to make a lot of them and I'm going to add them to the end. So now you can see this is going to duplicate my tabs. So notice I have all the 2s here and it runs past what I can see. Here's comments. See how it's scrolling? I can move this with this 3-button ellipse and I can click and drag to reduce my slider of my worksheet to allow me to have more tabs. Or I can use all the way over to the left-hand side, you have the navigation arrows. Notice it says a shift or control left click will take you to the furthest one or the first tab. A right click will see all of the other tabs. And you've got the arrows. See, as I use the arrows and wherever I am, I can click on them because I can see it. My arrows go. Your arrow, they have to be hidden behind here in order for your arrows to work. So the right click, I can also switch to any of these tabs with the right click on those arrows. Very quickly take me to it, and I can then do the control left click, and it will take me to the very front. Nice little things, but if you notice, you just rest your mouse pointers on those 2 little arrows at the very left-hand corner above the ready, and it will pop up telling you those shortcuts on how you can navigate through multiple tabs that are on your worksheets. Switching through multiple. To insert, you do have the plus. Most everyone knows how to do that. You just click on it and it will insert the tab. To name it, you just double click. Rename me. Now, I can also delete a tab by right-clicking on it. I can rename it, delete it, insert. I can move and copy. I can protect, which we'll take a look at a little bit, and I can also color code. So when you click off of that tab, you can see a specific color code to them. And I spelled name wrong. And now I can delete it by clicking on delete. And that is how you can insert and format your tabs, your worksheet tabs. Renaming, moving it's pretty easy. Tuesday does not go, or Thursday does not go after Tuesday. There's something else in between there. You want to click and drag. And you see that little black pointer? That's where it's supposed to be. So if I did this, you could see that's where I want my pointer. That's where I'm going to let go, and that's where that tab will be inserted. So now Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because I click and I drag them. You can also move them like I did before, which is the move and the copy, and you can move them within your own workbook, or you can create a new workbook. This one is most of the time is the way that you move them or create a new workbook. Sometimes you may have this really big spreadsheet and you need to send a particular file or only one tab to a particular person. You don't want to send the entire workbook. That's when you create the copy to a new workbook. So now when I do this, I only have an Excel file with just that tab in it. So now I can share it or send it with someone without risk of them taking a look at the rest of the document or possibly manipulating it. So that's how you can share. The other thing that most people like to do when they're creating a duplicate is instead of copying it within their own workbook, they'll come up to this top corner, which is the A and the 1, right at the corner, and it selects everything. What this does is it makes an exact duplicate using the copy, hit the insert, and paste, and it will make an exact copy. And that's usually how people do, well, I just made a duplicate of the tab. But it doesn't always work as well. Sometimes these don't align properly. The alignment's off. It could manipulate formulas if you have a formula that is going in between these two worksheet tabs. So just to be sure, it's easier to copy it and tell it where to go rather than using the select all and then copying and moving it that way. So we're going to go ahead and delete this one. So those are the copy, move worksheet by using the click and drag, by renaming, moving, using the rearranging with the moving and copy dialog box as well. There's another way that you can see all of this data that's inside your worksheet. And sometimes it can really go. Let me go ahead and clear some of this. Up at the top here is this clear. When you have either formatting or data within the columns and the rows that you don't need, you want to clear everything, which will clear formats and text. If you only want to clear the formatting but leave the text, they're pretty self-explanatory. Leave the formatting but delete the contents. Pretty easy, comments and hyperlinks, so that you can very easily and very quickly remove a lot of stuff. I use this for the clear all. And the reason is because a space inside a cell is considered data. And one of the problems that we have found in the past is someone will contact us and say, I can't open my Excel file. I just exported a CSV or a type of file, data from a database, and now I can't open it. One of the reasons is, especially when you're exporting from a database, is if it was only this much data, the database covers all of the rest of the cells with spaces, which Excel thinks is data. So as far as Excel is concerned, the worksheet's full and it's too big. And the way we know that is we take a look at the file size. And there are ways that we can open it from there, remove all of them spaces, reduce the file size, and then that's going to be fine. So just a FYI, if you ever run into a problem with saving a file or working in a file that was created from a database, use this clear feature. Select all of your rows and columns and then clear all. and then resave it and see if it doesn't reduce the size. Just a tip for you to work faster in Excel. So as I was saying, we can manipulate or take a look at the way we move around within our spreadsheet. I'm going to actually create a duplicate of these just so that I can have lots of space. And I'm going to delete this because we don't need those. Okay. Let me clear all of that one because it won't get rid of the thing. There we go. So I have this very long spreadsheet. I will have to scroll to see through it. But I would like to match up perhaps this first name with the other column of first names. So I'd like to be able to match them up and maybe do a comparison. But how do I do that? Because it's so large. One of the ways that you can do that is we can use your View tab, and they have right here under the window section, this is the view side by side when we're going to be taking a look at the different workbooks and not this one. What you're going to do is you're going to split your screen. So this divides our current window into two separate panes, and each one of these, actually four if you will, each one of these four panes, 1, 2, 3, 4, scroll independently. So I've clicked on I4 and you can see that my top half is scrolling. If I click on F18, the bottom half. And the same thing with the scrolling side to side. You can see which one is actually going to scroll, which is going to be the very far right. This way doesn't scroll unless you use this particular scroll bar. So you can see that there's two scroll bars. So just be aware that you can sort of get lost in this view. If I happen to use this particular one, I'm going to adjust it by clicking and dragging, perhaps to the bookings. Okay, notice that last, bookings first, last. I can now take this to the area that I want to compare and then scroll and say, okay, now I have the numbers or vacation. So now I can see what I need to see, including this end piece, because I sort of have them hiding on top of one another, which reduces columns. Same thing as hiding columns, sorry about that, would do the exact same thing. You can hide columns that you don't need to see, so you can see just the columns you want to see, or you can split your screen so that way you can manipulate or look through the data that you need to see. Now it doesn't have to be four. I can click and drag that all the way to the top and now it's a side by side. Or I could have done it the other way where I could have just dragged this over and it would be a top to bottom. Now I can turn it on. Clicking it will turn it off. So here's my top to bottom. There is another way that you can, it used to be up at the top here or at the bottom. Some of them might have it where you could double click and you would see the actual split. But I don't see where this one is happening right here, maybe. Yep, by double clicking on the split itself, it turns it off. So that one's a little harder. So now I just have the one spreadsheet. All of my columns are here, but notice it was on H. So I actually had A, B, C, and D sitting on top of everything here because I just didn't need to see it. That's split. You can also hide, so it hides the current window. And to bring the window back, you click unhide. So if I had multiple worksheets, which I do, I have Booking 6.1, and then I have my book one. So if I'm in this particular worksheet and I want to hide it, you can see it's hidden. Nobody's going to know that it's hidden. I have to unhide from my new workbook in order to get it back. See, there's my little box. unhide workbook just like it does with worksheet, and it will bring it back. This would be something if you were HR working on salaries, perhaps somebody's coming in, you can't really close it. You can hit save, but you don't want to close. It takes 5 minutes to open. So I'm going to hide it. Not by just minimizing it because someone can open it by accident. I'm going to hide it. They are not going to know that that's hidden, okay, until they unhide it. And they'd have to know about that feature, which I'm telling you guys now. And notice one thing is here it's green. Watch when I hide it, it turns this one blue. That's another little indication that you have a hidden workbook. Unhide it. May not always turn blue, but some do, some don't. So we do have, let me see, I have it, there it is. The other one is the new window. Let me go into this particular one. If I wanted a new window of the exact same thing for comparison, booking 6.1, copy 1, 6.1, copy 2. So now I can truly do the comparison back and forth. This is, if I change one, I'm going to have to save it as a different file name, because the original one would be still the same file. So this is nice for comparison, but there are other ways that you can do comparison now that we've graduated into better versions. But this is still the nice old handy way of taking a look and seeing if everything looks the same, or comparing and only updating ones that have changes. So you can also open a new window of the exact same thing. I use this to manipulate. So if I have this very nice large spreadsheet, but there's things that I want to do, perhaps I want a pivot table, I might do a new window. So I have an exact same copy of the same workbook, but now I'm going to mess with formulas. I'm going to create a pivot table here and just click, and I'm manipulating all of the things that I want it to do without addressing my original one. Once I've practiced it and played with it and said, yes, this works, I can then just close the other one and save this over the top of the original, because this has all my changes. So it's sort of that not mess with the original, but you need the exact same data, sort of a try before you permanently buy those changes, is by creating a new window. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and this comes back. The one is gone. It is just the original again. There is an arrange all. If you have multiple windows open, you can tile them, make them horizontal, side by side. So there's different ways that you can arrange. The last one is the freeze panes, and this is the most common one that I use because I do have a lot of data entry that might rely on a first and a last name. The kicker here is where you put your active cursor. So if I want to freeze A and B, and I want to freeze rows 1, 2, and 3, that means I need to put it in C5, because I want to see actually rows 1 through 4. I want to see 1 through 4 all the time. Then it would be C3, so that everything above that would scroll. If I go to C5, the bookings and the titles will stay. Everything to the left of it will stay. Just remember, to the top and to the left of the active cursor. It will never go to the right. It will always lock to the left and to the top. Now there are some additional options. So the freeze panes will freeze the panes where my current cursor is, above and to the left. I could only freeze the top row. That does not mean it's going to freeze all of these, which is considered the title. It's only the top row. Properly created Excel worksheets do not have titles in them. They do not have blank rows at the top. Row 1 should be your column headers. So that's the reason why the freeze row, top row is there. If you want Daily Summary Tuesday, That's where your header and footers come. The last one is to freeze the first column. So you can do the first column, you can do the first row, or you can be specific above and to the left of the current cursor, which I'm going to do. And so now when I scroll, you can see all of my rows will scroll, but what happens to my columns is they come down and go over and slide behind column A and B. So if there's something in S that I needed to do, but I needed to keep track of the person that I was manipulating, this is the reason why I would freeze at the names so that I can update information by the column and not have to worry about losing track on who I am actually updating. So those are the different ways that you can manipulate or move in between all of the different cells within a large worksheet, or the different columns or the different rows. Now coming back, how do I unfreeze? You want to click on that again and notice it changes to the unfreeze, and it will then put you back to normal. I had mentioned that these blank rows up at the top, this is a major no-no when you're dealing with Excel's worksheets. This Excel is the beginning step to databases, and databases means that you want to not have repeat information and you do not want to have blanks. The data is supposed to be in there. Each column, each row, each cell should have something in it so that you can search it, filter it, manipulate it any way you want. But it is not supposed to have blanks. Excel, when it selects things, it looks for a blank and that tells it to stop. It will come down until it's a blank and it tells you to stop. And that means that automatic selected range, if you will. If I click here and go to Insert Pivot Table, notice it selects the range for me. It automatically started at A4 because it went to the top and ran into those blank rows. And it said, no, 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 I can't have blanks in my data range. So I'm going to start here. And you could potentially miss some important data. So blanks are really bad because it will truncate that data above or below a blank. So you never really want to have these, hence headers and footers. So I'm actually going to copy the data. Actually, I'm going to take this and put it over here just so that I have a copy of what I'm supposed to type. And we're going to go in and create our headers and footers. Now, in the beginning, I was mentioning how do I get there? Well, you can go to a couple different ways. I can change my view, and I can go into the page layout, which is the most common way, or I can go into page layout and then come in and hit headings and footers this way. You can go into the page setup, which is this area right here, and there's a dialog box, and on that dialog box is the header and footer. This is the old way. This way has been going on since the version 97. They don't take away, they leave in all the old stuff, but they add new stuff. That was a lot of clicks for me to get to the exact same thing that I want to do. The difference is you can do a custom header and a custom footer, or you can grab common ones. So if you just don't really care, you just need a page number, then you could just click on this, grab it, and then go. If you want to create a different odd or an even, this is where you need to go. Remember in the layout view, I said there's no sections that I can't change the different headers. Well, here you can change the first page, and you can also do odd and evens, which sort of is a sense of that book look, but it's still not sections. So that's the other way that you can get to it. And we're going to go into page setup. We're going to go ahead and go into our view and our page layout, and this will bring me up to my header. So I'm going to click inside the header, and I'm actually going to, I could probably copy and paste this right into it, and then this one would be Tuesday. So now I can actually delete this, and it's on the top of everyone. Now there's additional information that I can add. Notice there's 3 sections. And when I click inside these sections, I get the header and footer tools. So I'm going to go into the design. My recommendation is to always put a date. Now the dates can be different. This is the date that it's opened, the date that it was created. This would be the current date and the current time, which means it's going to be the date that it's opened. If you want it static, then you would have to type in here date created or date modified, or there's a formula that you can use for that. But up at the top here, it's current date, current time. Down at the bottom, we're actually going to add some of these paths, and you could have a page number up at the top since we're going to be using a path. This is a number of pages, so this will see page of or a total number of pages. Now, I want to look and see what this looks like. Here's your different odds and evens. I'm going to go ahead and click on my preview, if you will. Let's see if I can't see that. Oh, got to get out of the view. Normal, click, there we go. Wouldn't let me out for a sec. So now you can see that I have 10 pages and I can add text in front of this. Total number of pages. And when I click off, you could see that the 10 is the code. So that's how I can do my header if I wanted it custom. Just remember it's always going to be the same here unless I choose. Got to click inside my header and I can choose to have a different first page or a different odd or even. I can scale it and align it with margins. You can also go down to the footer, and I'm going to click inside the footer, go to my design, and I'm going to add a file name and a sheet. Now this should give me the sheet as well. Nope. So then I can put the sheet name here. So this I would put in some text just so that people know what I'm looking at. And then perhaps on this side, just put my page number. So you can see that this is the file, the sheet, and the number of pages. Go back to normal. Guess what? I don't see any of this. I'm going to delete all 3 of these. And now when I go to print preview, perhaps it'll go to print preview. Hold on, it's got a dialog box open. You can see there's my header and there's my footer on all 10 of my pages. Pretty easy. The last thing that we actually have time for, because, well, actually we're all there, almost there, hiding in column rows we did, is setting the print area, which is also goes into the page setup. So most of the rest of this, except for the sharing portion, will be covered. I can cover it, but we're running a little bit long. So now I've got my document, it's set up, I have all of my tabs, I know how to manipulate, hide things. It's time for me to take a look at how do I take this document and make it good for print. I'm going to start by page layout. You can go to the preview and it has these things here. They're great for really quick on the spot, let's go, but not if you're dealing with a very large spreadsheet or if you want to make a more permanent kind of setting, because you want to go through each one of these. If you like the old dialog box, which I happen to like, it's a little easier, it is in the dialog box launcher, and you just start with page, margins, header, footer, and sheet. If you cover all 4 of these tabs, you have covered everything. So here we're going to take a look at this. Right now it's in portrait. Well, we have more columns than rows, so we're going to do landscape. Also, the adjust 100% normal size. This is where the print preview comes in. It's now going to take a look at it and it's going to say I've reduced it by 8, but I have all of these page breaks and stuff, perhaps I need to go in and remove some of these page breaks. Remember that reset all page breaks? That's where this comes in. So now I could take a look at the pages now. It's at 6. It's looking much nicer. I'm going to reduce the size here. Let's see as I go through it. I still have some things that aren't quite exactly right. And that's where I can come here. I can change my margins or do my scaling. One of the things I like on this particular one is to fit the columns to one page. This particular one has a lot of columns, but if I was just 1 or 2 columns off, that's what I would do. Fit all of them to one page. If I go back to the page setup, even in this dialog box, there is none that say fit to one page. I would have to say 1 page wide and 0 pages tall, which means I don't care how many pages tall. If I want to force it to be 3 pages tall, it is going to reduce the size of my font by about 42%, I think is what it said there. So now this is how it's going to look. This is 1 page because I have the scaling on here. Let me remove the scaling. This one superseded the other one. Let me go back here. I'm going to go to 1 page by 3 page. Click OK. Print preview. And so there we go. It's still forcing it because I don't have enough columns. I don't have enough rows. I have more columns than rows. So let's go the other way. I can go 2 pages wide, and it's always going to be 1 page tall because there's not enough rows. So now you can read this much easier. You've got the entire width of rows, and you have 2 pages. A little bit easier to read. One other thing though, that's how you get all your columns on it. If we had more rows than we did columns, let's go ahead and insert some. So now I have a ton more. What happens when I have multiple pages? I'm going to remove all my scaling. When I start going down, guess what? I lose all of my headers or my column headers. Those are called print labels at the top. And again, you can do these by print titles. And what it wants to know, and this is on the Sheet tab of the page setup, is what rows to repeat. It will always be the top row. That's all, just the top row. So now when you do the print preview, every page you go to, whether it's page 1, 2, 3, or 4, will always have the proper headings at the top. So this particular large worksheet has a header, a footer. It has all of everything fitting on a very easy to read page, and it has all of the titles at the top, so now I can see what I'm actually looking at. You can adjust more by turning on and off your column headers or your grids. You got your grid lines, so you can say view or don't. Whether you want them printed headings, you could do the same thing, whether you print them or not, which is the A, B, C. Finish off by going through each one of these. Go through each one of the tabs. And once you go through each one of the tabs, let's say the margins, you want it horizontally picked, you're going to have the perfect printing document. Because this is so large, I wouldn't do that. I would just let it go from the top left corner all the way. You can see we reduced the size of the margins, your headers and your footers, and your sheets. This is the way it prints. If you don't want it to print down, then you're going to tell it to print over. Whether to print your grid lines, black and white, draft calling, row, and column headings, they're all in here. So that's going to conclude today's training session. I apologize that I didn't get to the sharing, but it is part of the other courses that if you do click on the sharing, it's up at the top here. You save this to the cloud and then you assign it to someone. If you would like any additional information, you can go ahead and just email me at lbaker@answerwhere.com, and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. And we can even go a little bit further into anything else if you had questions on it.